The morning I came home from the hospital, my husband was not there. Not because of an emergency, not because something had gone wrong at work. He was sitting in a booth at Carver's Steakhouse on 5th, splitting a bottle of Bordeaux with his mother and his sister, celebrating the fact that he was now a father. Without me. Without our daughter. I stood in the lobby of our building with a baby carrier in one arm, a discharge bag in the other, and a nurse from the maternity ward who had insisted on walking me to the car, except there was no car. There was a ride share. A stranger sedan that smelled like air freshener and fast food. The nurse looked at me with the kind of pity that people try to hide but can't. She squeezed my arm and said, "You take care of yourself, honey." I smiled and told her I would. Our daughter Rosie was 4 days old. She weighed 6 pounds and 9 ounces. She had my nose and, I was already certain, my stubbornness. She slept through the entire ride home, her tiny face slack and peaceful, completely unaware that the man who was supposed to be sitting next to us had chosen a medium rare ribeye instead. My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old. And the night I walked through that lobby alone, I made a phone call that changed everything. But I need to go back a little further first. My husband. I'll call him my husband for now, because that is still technically what he was. His name is Derek. We met when I was 26 at a fundraiser my company sponsored. He was charming in the way that certain men are charming, effortlessly, almost accidentally, as if the attention he drew was a surprise to him too. He had a good laugh and an easy smile, and he asked questions when most men only talked about themselves. I thought that meant he was different. He wasn't different, he was just patient. We dated for 2 years. He proposed on a rooftop in Savannah on my birthday. My father flew in from Portland to be there, which should have told me something. Derek had called him, planned it, made sure my dad was present for the moment. I remember thinking, this man knows what matters to me. I remember thinking I was lucky. We married the following spring. For the first year and a half, everything was fine. Not perfect, but fine. Derek worked in sales, made decent money, was sociable and fun at dinner parties. My job. I'm a senior account manager at a marketing firm. Paid more than his, but we never made that a thing. Or I thought we never made it a thing. The first sign that something was off came about 18 months into the marriage, when I noticed Derek had started using my credit card for things he didn't mention. Small charges at first. A dinner here. A hotel minibar there. When I brought it up, he laughed it off. I forgot my wallet, babe. You know how I am. I let it go. The second sign came when I got pregnant. We had talked about children. We both wanted them. But when I told him, his first reaction, before the hug, before the excitement, was to ask me how much maternity leave I was planning to take. I filed that away somewhere in the back of my mind and chose not to look at it. The pregnancy was hard. I was sick for the first 4 months, tired for all 9, and Derek was present, technically. He came to appointments. He assembled the crib. But there was a quality to his involvement that I couldn't quite name. Something that felt like performance rather than participation. Like he was checking boxes. Like he was doing what a husband is supposed to do, because someone might be watching, not because he actually wanted to. When I went into labor, he drove me to the hospital and stayed through the worst of it. I will give him that. He was there when Rosie came into the world, and I watched his face in that moment and thought I saw something real. Something unguarded. I told myself the rest of it. The checked boxes, the credit card charges, the strange detachment, was stress and fear and inexperience. I told myself it would change now that she was here. It did not change. On the second day in the hospital, Derek started talking about dinner. Not hospital cafeteria dinner. He wanted to take his mother and his sister out to celebrate. They had driven up from Charleston, and he felt bad that they'd been waiting. He mentioned a restaurant. He mentioned a reservation he had apparently already made. "When did you make a reservation?" I asked. "Couple weeks ago," he said. "I knew they'd want to come up when the baby came. Figured we'd all go out." "All of us," I said. "You mean including me?" He looked at me. "You'll still be here," he said. "You can't leave yet." That was true. I was scheduled to be discharged the following morning, day 4. The dinner was day 3. So you made plans to go out to dinner, I said slowly, on the night before I come home from the hospital. It's just dinner, Claire. They came all the way up here. I did not say what I was thinking. I was holding Rosie, and she was asleep, and I didn't want the energy in the room to be that energy when she was sleeping. So I said, okay. And I looked out the window, and I filed that away too in the place where I was storing everything I wasn't ready to look at yet. The next morning, discharge day, Derek came to the hospital later than I expected. I had been dressed and ready for 2 hours. Rosie was in her car seat. The nurses had done their final checks. We were waiting. When he walked in, he was in dark jeans and a button-down, and his hair was still slightly damp from a shower he'd taken at home. Not at the hospital. At home. He had gone home, showered, changed, and then come to get us. I didn't say anything about that either. The nurse who was walking us out asked if the car was pulled around front. Derek reached into his pocket and then his face did something complicated. I actually drove my car today, he said. It's a 2-door. The car seat won't fit right in the back. I stared at him. Why did you drive your car? I was dropping my mom and Dana off at brunch this morning and it was easier, Derek. My voice was very quiet. Where's my car? My car was a 4-door SUV that I had bought 2 years before Rosie was born. It had a proper back seat. It had the base for the infant carrier already installed, which we had done together, which I had watched a YouTube video about to make sure it was correct. It's at home, he said. In the garage. Why didn't you drive it here? I told you I was taking Mom and Dana to, so how are we getting home? There was a pause that lasted about 3 seconds and felt like 3 minutes. I can call you a rideshare, he said. I looked at him. I looked at our 4-day-old daughter in her car seat. I looked back at him. You want me, I said, to take a rideshare home from the hospital, with a newborn, because you drove your 2-door car to take your mother to brunch. It's not a big deal, Claire. Plenty of people. Please stop talking, I said. The nurse was very deliberately looking at her clipboard. I picked up my discharge bag. I adjusted Rosie's carrier. I said very calmly, call the rideshare. The ride home was 15 minutes. I sat in the back with Rosie and I looked out the window and I thought about the reservation he'd made weeks ago. I thought about coming home to an empty apartment the night before. I thought about the credit card charges. I thought about the way he'd asked about my maternity leave before he'd asked how I was feeling. I thought about my father. My father's name is Thomas. He is 63 years old, and he is the kind of man who, when I was 8 and had a bad dream, would sit on the edge of my bed and read to me until I fell back asleep. He is the kind of man who drove 14 hours when my college roommate called him because I had mono and wasn't taking care of myself. He is the kind of man who, when I told him I was marrying Derek, said, "He's a good time, Claire. Make sure he's also a good man." I thought he was being overprotective. I told him he had nothing to worry about. When the rideshare pulled up to our building, I got out, and I looked up at the windows of our apartment on the 8th floor, and I called my father. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, sweetheart, you home?" "Just got here," I said. "Dad, I need you to come." There was a pause. My father is not a man who panics. He is a man who panics. He is a man who assesses. I could hear him doing it through the phone. "Is the baby okay?" "She's fine. She's perfect. My voice did a thing I hadn't expected it to do. "I need you here. I need someone in my corner. I'm booking the flight right now," he said. "Don't do anything until I get there." He arrived the next afternoon. In the 24 hours between my phone call and my father's arrival, some things happened. Derek came home from dinner in a good mood, smelling like wine, full of stories about the restaurant. He seemed genuinely unaware that anything was wrong. He kissed Rosie on the forehead and said she looked like his side of the family. He fell asleep on the couch watching television. I fed our daughter, and I thought, I had been given access to Derek's email 2 years ago when he asked me to check a confirmation he was waiting for and didn't have his phone. He had never changed the password. I want to be clear that I am not proud of what I did next. I want to be clear that I had spent 3 years telling myself that the feeling in my chest, that low, persistent unease, was anxiety or hormones or my own fear of being happy. I want to be clear that I did not go looking for trouble. But I was sitting in a rocking chair at 2 in the morning nursing my daughter, and I needed to know if I was imagining things. I wasn't imagining things. In Derek's email going back 14 months, there were bank statements forwarded from an account I didn't recognize. The account was under both our names. I had never opened an account with Derek at that bank. The address on file was his mother's house in Charleston. There were transfers, not enormous amounts, nothing dramatic enough to set off an alarm if you weren't looking. $300 here, $500 there. Once, $1,100 on a Tuesday in March, noted in the memo line as home repair. We had done no home repairs in March. The money was going to a Venmo account. I looked up the account name. It belonged to a woman named Shiana. I did not know anyone named Shiana. I sat with that for a long time. Then I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself and put my phone face down on the side table and looked at my daughter's face and thought, okay. Now I know. My father came with one bag and a look on his face that told me he had already prepared himself for bad news. He hugged me for a long time in the doorway. He held Rosie and didn't say anything for a minute, just looked at her. Then he looked at me. Tell me, he said. I told him everything. The dinner, the ride share, the account, Sienna. My father listened without interrupting. When I was done, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Where's Derek right now? At work. Good. He set Rosie gently in her bassinet. I need to make some calls. My father is retired, but he spent 30 years as a corporate attorney. He has friends. He knows people. I used to think that was just something Dad said, I know people, as a way of feeling important. I understand now that it is not something to dismiss. By the time Derek came home that evening, my father had spoken to his attorney. His attorney had spoken to a forensic accountant, and the forensic accountant had already found 3 things that Derek's amateur financial creativity had missed. The account in both our names had been opened with a forged signature. Mine. The transfers to Sienna's Venmo totaled over 14 months, just over $19,000. There was a second account. Different bank. My name only. Derek had apparently decided at some point in the last year that having a backup was smart. It had $4,000 in it that I had never deposited. Derek walked through the front door at 6:15 carrying takeout bags, and he stopped when he saw my father sitting at the kitchen table. Tom, he said with the smile he always used on my father. Easy, practiced. Didn't know you were coming up? Sit down, Derek, my father said. Derek looked at me. I was standing by the window with Rosie in my arms, and I looked back at him and I didn't say anything because my father had asked me to let him handle the opening, and I had learned a long time ago that when my father says he'll handle something, he handles it. Derek sat down. My father's attorney, a man named Gerald, who had apparently driven up that afternoon because my father had asked him to, came in from the hallway. Derek's smile did something unfortunate. Gerald placed 3 printed documents on the table. He explained, in the calm and specific language of a man who has done this many times, what had been found: the forged signature, the transfers, the second account. He used terms like identity fraud and financial exploitation of a spouse and potential wire fraud charges. He said these terms the way you'd say, please pass the salt. Completely ordinary. Completely devastating. Derek said, I can explain. My father said, I'd advise you not to. There was a long silence. Gerald placed a 4th document on the table. It was a separation agreement. It had already been prepared. I'd signed my portion that morning at the kitchen table, while Rosie slept in her bassinet and my father made us both coffee. This agreement, Gerald said, includes full restitution of all transferred funds, relinquishment of any claim to shared property, and a structured custody arrangement that prioritizes Rosie's welfare and Claire's stability during the postpartum period. Derek looked at the document. He looked at me. He looked at my father. "If you contest this," Gerald said, "the forensic accountant's report goes to the district attorney's office. The forged signature alone is a felony in this state." Derek picked up the pen. He did not say anything dramatic. There was no shouting, no begging, no grand moment of confession. He signed the document, and then he stood up, and he picked up his takeout bags, which I thought was strange, taking the food, and he walked to the door and he left. My father looked at me. "You okay?" I looked down at Rosie, who had slept through the entire thing, her little mouth opened slightly, her fingers curled against her chest. "I will be," I said. And I meant it. In the weeks that followed, Gerald's office processed everything efficiently. The accounts were closed. The transfers were documented for restitution. Derek moved into his mother's house in Charleston and retained his own attorney, who apparently took one look at the forensic accountant's report and advised him, strongly, not to fight. He didn't fight. The custody arrangement gives him every other weekend once Rosie is 6 months old. Supervised calls in the meantime. It's fair. It's appropriate. It's more than I might have offered if I had let anger make the decisions. But my father taught me a long time ago that the goal is not to win. The goal is to make sure that the damage doesn't reach your daughter. I think about the woman I was in that hospital room, watching Derek talk about a dinner reservation, and telling myself the unease was just hormones. I think about the woman in the rideshare, looking out the window, holding all of it together because Rosie was asleep, and I didn't want to disturb her. I think about standing in that lobby, looking up at the 8th floor, and finally deciding to stop being reasonable about something that was not reasonable. The call to my father lasted 4 minutes. He spent about 30 seconds assessing and the rest of the time booking a flight. That is my father. That is what it looks like when someone is genuinely in your corner. Rosie is 11 weeks old now. She has started smiling, real smiles, not the reflex kind. She smiles at the mobile above her crib and at the sound of my voice, and, occasionally, at nothing in particular, which I find very relatable. My apartment is quiet in the evenings. It is mine in a way it wasn't before. Not legally, it was always mine, but atmospherically. There is no performance happening in these rooms. There is no one checking boxes or calculating what my paycheck is worth to them. There is just me and my daughter, and the particular stillness of a life that is being rebuilt correctly. My father visits every 3 weeks. He sits in the rocking chair and holds Rosie and reads to her the way he used to read to me. Last time, he was reading her a picture book about a bear who loses his hat and spends the whole story looking for it. She stared up at his face with the solemn attention of someone who takes bears very seriously. "She's going to be something," my father said. "She already is," I said. He looked at me over the top of the book, and something in his expression, quiet and certain and completely without drama, reminded me why I'd called him that day. Not because I needed someone to fix it. Not because I couldn't have figured it out alone eventually. Because there are moments when you need someone to look at you and already know. And he already knew.